listening to the Chase Merrill podcast.
People who are not informed on it, when they hear psychedelic, they think LSD, they think mushrooms, they think something like things like that. What do you say?
Yeah.
How would you describe it?
Like what is a psychedelic?
Yeah.
Is the question? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the traditional definition, like the Latin root of psychedelic means mind manifesting. So we're thinking about substances that create these psyche experiences in the psyche that, bend and twist our mind. And, you can get into the more like scientific definition of tryptamines and alkaloids. I don't really approach my work from a scientific lens because I'm not a scientist. But to me, a psychedelic is a substance that creates an experience of altered consciousness and allows us to experience life and ourself and our perception from a level of consciousness that we normally can't.
What is your work?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So I'm out there. I don't know what kind of topics you usually cover on your podcast.
Anything that interests me, I talk to. It doesn't matter if it's athletes to breath coaches to doctors, whatever it is.
Cool. So yeah, I have my hands in a few things. I'm probably most known for my work on the Modern Psychedelics podcast. I've been podcasting about psychedelics, before Oprah and all those people were. It's a very competitive space these days. It's funny, like it was so niche when I started over 4 years ago, and now everyone and their mom is talking about psychedelics. So it's become much more, let's say, competitive to grow an audience in this niche. But I started that podcast as someone who was on her healing journey, and I was learning so much about psychedelics. And I'm such a dork about things that I'm into that I wanted to talk to and interview the greatest minds in the field of psychedelics. So I was like, I'll start a podcast. So that was my intention with that. And since then, my work has evolved so much. I got trained as a certified professional life coach at a gold standard coaching institution. And, I've been coaching clients from all over the world through a framework that is focused on energy and consciousness. And it sounds really woo-woo, but it's actually not. It's super grounded, super practical. CEOs use this framework just as much as very spiritual folks do. So that's my profession. And then more recently, I've actually launched a CPG brand in Canada, which I thought I would never do. And I started a CPG brand with my mom, and it is based on a psychoactive substance. It's not psychedelic. It's psychedelic adjacent, I would say. And it's this plant from South Africa called Kanna that is actually a natural SRI. So it acts similarly to like a pharmaceutical SRI with some other fun added benefits. So yeah, that's my professional work in a nutshell.
Is the Canada regulation on psychedelics a little different than the US regulation? What do you guys work with up there?
It's probably pretty similar, actually. Like I think Canada maybe has a bit more of a gray area. We have like mushroom shops all over Toronto, all over Vancouver. It's kind of crazy. I don't know how they're not shut down, but the majority of psychedelics do remain illegal, with the exception of things like 5-MeO, DMT, and Iboga, which are more gray, unregulated, which is funny because those are my two favorite psychedelics. I'm like, that's very curious. But yeah, like LSD, psilocybin, ayahuasca, these things that grow in nature have somehow been made illegal.
Yeah.
And that doesn't really seem to be stopping the movement. There's a very strong, thriving underground culture, whether it's with medicine work or within rave culture, which I also have been participating in for 15 years. So it's probably pretty similar, but we're trying to make these substances accessible through regulation and policy. It's just moving really slowly.
Yeah.
Just give me one quick moment, then we'll be right back to the episode. If you are enjoying the show, go ahead and give me a follow or subscribe wherever you are listening. It helps way more than you'd think. And if you wouldn't mind leaving a rating or a review, that helps new people find the show as well. And if you have any questions or comments or recommendations for guests, go ahead and reach out to me at Chase C. Merrill on Instagram or leave a comment right here on Spotify. Thank you so much for being here. Now let's get back to the episode.
I live in Denver, Colorado.
Nice.
So definitely a lot of, cannabis shops all around. You see it, you can, when you go downtown Denver, you'll drive by some like indoor growing facilities where they just have like all their windows and everything. I haven't seen any mushroom or psychedelic shops. Maybe they're integrated, but definitely, yeah. Maybe I just haven't been looking. I need to maybe start looking for that.
Yeah, you'd be surprised at like how out there in the open they are here. It's wild. Yeah.
So you mentioned your work with like CEOs, life coaching, you use psychedelics as part of that. How's that integrated?
So I don't use psychedelics directly with that. I just tend to have clients who are in the psychedelic world. They might be psychonauts, they might be doing their healing work with psychedelics. Some are just psychedelic curious. However, the coaching framework that I use works beautifully with psychedelics because it's about the 7 levels of consciousness, the 7 levels of energy. This is a really cool research validated coaching framework created by IPEC, where I went to school. And they have these 7 levels of energy where some levels are destructive and draining, and then others are more constructive and fueling and creative. And the higher up we go, the more energy we have access to, the higher our consciousness is, the more we can access states like flow, creativity, compassion, connection. And of course, as we move up on that scale of the levels of energy, it gets more and more psychedelic. And in fact, that like highest level of consciousness that I work with is creator consciousness, where we are the creator, the participant, and the observer of our life all at the same time, which is really where psychedelics take us to a lot of the time. So it all works together in a really cool way. And then, of course, some of my clients are preparing for iboga, preparing for ayahuasca, or integrating experiences. So we really get into all of it, and I will help with their prep and integration process. That's probably like the most direct way that we work with psychedelics in my coaching work.
The 7th level of the energy, would you say the only way to get there is with psychedelics, or can you get there? No.
Definitely not. Like, psychedelics create a state where we have such easy access to that, right? Our consciousness is just blown open, and we're able to have these realizations about, how powerful we really are. And of course, not everyone has these realizations, but psychedelics can definitely be amplifiers of this higher level of consciousness state. Through my coaching, a lot of my clients will come in at these very low levels of energy, level 1, 2, 3, which is kind of like the average resonating level of humanity, I would say. And through working with me and through coaching, they're able to access these higher states in their day-to-day lives. And the whole point of doing something like coaching, which you don't do in a psychedelic state, you do in a sober state, in your day-to-day life, in your real life. The whole point of that is to help us access the gifts and the messages and the insights and the wisdom from these expanded states of consciousness. Meditation will probably get you there too. Any type of mindful, self-reflective process will get you there. Choose your own adventure. Many paths lead to the same destination.
I'm curious about, you say most people come in at levels 1, 2, and 3. What are the difference between those, and what do those look like?
Yeah, sure. So level 1 is that lowest level of consciousness, which is victim consciousness. I'm sure we've all been there. I used to live there myself. The world is against me. Why is this happening to me? Why does everything bad always happen to me? what's the point of even trying, and of course from that energy we stay stuck, we can't move forward because we see ourselves as powerless. So that's that lowest level of energy where people have a really hard time moving forward and getting unstuck. And usually people really living here are best served by something like therapy. And then a level up from that is conflict, the consciousness of conflict. So this is where we're really seeing the world as black and white. Everything is good or bad, right or wrong, right? We really see the world through a judgmental lens. And because we see the world through this judgmental right or wrong lens, we really want to be right. We really are so committed to being right. And so that leads to a lot of conflict, disagreements, anger, getting things done by force. It's a level up from victim for sure. There's a little bit more energy. You'll move forward a little bit more with that level 2 energy, but that force and that anger is very destructive, obviously, to ourselves, to our relationships, to our works. I do believe that our collective consciousness is very much at a level 2 place. If you go online, if you go anywhere, people are really like, that's right, that's wrong, I'm right, you're wrong. We really are closed off as a collective to seeing the world through this more open, fluid, non-judgmental frame. And then a level up from that, level 3 is the gateway into these more constructive levels of energy. So level 3 is it's a tricky one to work with. It's this energy of toleration settling. Whenever anyone uses the F word and says, it's fine, I know that they're operating at level 3. It's fine. It's not what I want it to be, but whatever. It just is. We're sweeping things under the rug. We are really tolerating and settling for it's good enough. It's fine. But we're not really able to move past that. It's fine. It's that like classic, you know, nothing's wrong, but nothing's really right. But things feel probably a little bit more wrong than they do feel right. The benefit of this is that it actually can help us start moving forward on things, and we can start sweeping things under the rug in order to maintain that end goal and keep moving towards our end goal. We see this level of energy a lot in corporations and workplaces because it's just not worth the fight. It's fine, whatever. Most of us are usually settling or tolerating in the workplace. And yeah, like I said, the good thing about this is that it does keep us moving forward. But if we stay in this level 3 energy for too long without addressing the things that are under the rug, what happens is we trip over the rug. All that catabolic, that level 1 and 2 energy that we sweep under the rug, we trip over and we may fall into those states. Yeah.
I think I've spent most of my life probably in level 2. Definitely not victim, but kind of like I've always been very black and white. Like this is right, this is wrong. I need to do this. As an athlete, it's just like I'm either training or I'm not. I'm either working towards it or I'm not. Definitely, I feel like I've been moving out of that. I don't necessarily know if I'm in 3. I don't feel like I say things are like fine. Like I actively will try to change them or fix them or see the good in that or try to find the upside. So I don't know if I'm at 3, but I've definitely spent a lot of time at 2.
Yeah. You're definitely not alone. Yeah. Most of the clients that I'm onboarding are like level 2 is, so we have access to all of these levels. It's just like, which ones do we tend to be in the most?
Yeah.
Right. And level 2, it's a popular one.
Yeah.
It's a popular one. My favorite one, if I may share, is
Please.
probably level 5 energy. It's the energy of opportunity. It's that growth mindset where we know that no matter what happens, we can learn and grow from it. We're not as committed to being right. We're committed to growing and learning. So no matter what happens, even if we're wrong or if we lose, quote unquote, we don't really see things as winning and losing. We just see it as growing, learning, we're able to shift gears, we're able to continue going forward, and we see everything that happens as an opportunity. And yeah, I think that that's just such a really beautiful place for a lot of us in the personal development space to be in and to strive for.
Absolutely. I think that's something that I've in my past younger self would be something that I could never probably get into. I spent probably 100% of my time in level 2. As I'm being more reflective, talking to more people, trying to spend that time pulling myself out of being an athlete, being in that mindset, I definitely do find myself spending more time in that mindset. If not default, then consciously able to get there. Sometimes like I have to work at it and I can get there and I can, but it is a conscious effort. So I'm definitely spending more time there than I have in the past. And I would like to be able to spend all my time there in the default setting.
Yeah. Yeah, and being an athlete, obviously you want to win.
Yes.
Right? So just the nature of being an athlete is kind of very level 2, but you can also gain so much from being a competitive person and adapting some, level 5 energy where, even if I didn't win, what can I learn from this? What can I take with me? What am I learning about myself? What opportunity is presenting itself for me? So it's all about perception. It's all about the level of consciousness you have at any time, which is exactly what psychedelics are, right? They open the valve for us to see things from a totally different level of conscious awareness than we are used to seeing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's spot on. It's so much more invigorating and relaxing and inviting to have that level 5 energy mindset in sport versus having that level 2 mindset. Then it's just, if you don't get first, which only one person does, then you're a failure and it's exhausting and you can't maintain. Versus if you can take that other energy and apply that to sport, like, yes, winning is important to me, but it is not the thing. Like, I can still maintain, and that's so much more invigorating and allows you to sustain that sport.
Yeah, exactly. You got it.
I read the book Mindset by Carol Dweck, and I think she coined, or is one of the people who coined the phrase growth mindset. Like, she uses it very heavily in that book. And I read that probably before I was ready to read that. So I need to go back and reread it again. But definitely that's a phrase that I've had in my brain for a long time. Like, I've had at least the consciousness to be like, hey, you're not in a growth mindset right now. I don't know if I can pull myself there, but at least you're not there, and you're not pretending to be, and this isn't the ideal state. So I think that consciousness, if you don't have the ability to get, let's say, up to that level 5, I think the first step would be the consciousness of like knowing where you are, and that's probably not the best place to be.
Yeah. Yeah. That self reflection is key.
So you're speaking to somebody who has zero experience in any kind of altered state. Like, I don't take caffeine. I don't do anything simply because my body doesn't respond to caffeine. Like, I literally don't feel anything. I don't think none of my siblings do. So I've never taken that. What would be the benefit, or what would you recommend, or why should people who've never done psychedelics, why should they consider it? Or
Yeah, I mean, I don't encourage anyone to do psychedelics because,
fair enough.
they're not for everyone. They're not for everyone. It's such a deeply personal it's such a deeply personal journey to embark on. And I think a lot of people come to psychedelics, especially with the narratives and the coverage that they are getting in the mainstream media. A lot of people are coming to them to feel better,
For sure.
right? There's a lot of talk about psychedelic assisted therapy and
Mhm.
healing trauma. And at the core of that is really people want to feel better.
Mhm.
Now, the thing about psychedelics is that they're not it's not a pharmaceutical type of model where you know eat some mushrooms or have a tab of LSD and you take it and then you come out on the other side magically healed and better. It's so not like that. It's
That is
so
a
not
narrative
like
that
that.
is pushed.
Oh my gosh. I mean, we could talk for hours about the realities of it. So, I think people want to feel better, and psychedelics and engaging in this type of path can offer a path to feeling better, to feeling more connected to yourself, to feeling more connected with the world around you, to really know yourself better, who you are, what you want, what drives you, how the experiences in your life have shaped you and led you to where you are today, what's working in your life and what isn't. What psychedelics offer us, and what I as a coach offer to people, is a mirror, a very clean mirror. And a lot of people are scared to look in the mirror. A lot of people are very scared to confront themselves, to look at themselves deeply, to do the work necessary to really meet themselves. But that's exactly where the healing is. And it's not one experience, it's not one journey, it's not one retreat. It can take, years and years of being on this path to experience the relief that we are looking for. And so I think, back to your question, people are taking psychedelics and choosing this path to feel better. That's the main thing. But they have so much more to offer us. There's so much around, the human optimization, betterment of the well, um, enhancing creativity, supporting conscious entrepreneurship. They're so adaptable, and they can really meet us where we're at. And of course, every medicine has its own thing, its own energy, its own teaching style, its own spirit, if I may go there. And so this broad umbrella of psychedelic medicine, of psychedelic substances, have so much to offer us. They're also really fun. Like, uh, you said you've never altered your consciousness, but uh, I mean, I felt like I hadn't truly lived fully until the first time I did acid at a music festival and experienced that feeling of universal love and connection between myself and everyone who was around me. And so they can also offer these very like hedonistic, spiritual, social experiences for us. And there's so many benefits of doing this work, but I really want to preface it by saying that it's not a magic pill. It's not an instant solution. I just got back from an Iboga retreat, and Iboga is considered, like, they call it the Mount Everest of psychedelics. It's the graduate school. It's the tough one, it's a 24 to 30-hour journey. It's very intense. And I just got back from doing that for the second time, actually, the first time being 2.5 years ago. And, I felt like I really got to the root of myself that I've been trying to get to for these 6 years of working with psychedelics. And I've learned so much about really what it takes to create nervous system safety, to create psychological safety, to have like the spiritual stamina to go on the journey of self-discovery and to really know yourself and to be able to really open those doors in the psyche that we have been keeping closed and shut and suppressed, because I accessed a part of myself and a truth within myself that I had suppressed so strongly and deeply that when it all came out, it was very overwhelming for me. But through that experience, I learned the realities of just how long this work is. And that's not to say that there's not something to be gained from each experience and each journey. And that's why integration is so important. But it's a path, it's a journey, it's not an event, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So if somebody were to take, like you said, you took acid, you said at a rave, was that Your first day.
Yeah, for example,
Yeah. For example, for your first, what is it possible that people have these negative or these bad experiences if they were to take it in the wrong setting or at the wrong time?
Yeah, definitely. You know, we talk a lot about set and setting. That's, excuse me. Hopefully you're editing these.
All good.
Yeah, we talk about set and setting. That's one of the first concepts that people are introduced to when they come into the world of psychedelics. So set refers to your mindset. So what is the quality of your mind? How are you really feeling? How emotionally and mentally ready are you to have an experience of expanded consciousness? If we're feeling really vulnerable, if we're feeling really sad, if we're feeling like we need to escape, psychedelics are not it. You know, alcohol's probably a better option if you want to escape your problems, because psychedelics are amplifiers. What that means is that they are probably going to go directly into that thing that is bothering you and amplify it and put it in your face so that you can't ignore it. So, of course, we can use this amplify we can use this amplifying quality of psychedelics to our advantage by choosing to do them in a safe, supportive setting with a professional who is trained to guide us and help us work through some of the things that we are struggling with. But in a recreational setting, I mean, it's not a good idea to be doing psychedelics recreationally if there's any sort of tension or stress or trouble that is really present for you, because it's likely that you're not going to have a recreational experience. My friend, who is a total psychonaut, always we always joke around like, oh yeah, after the rave I went home and was up for hours, because you know it always turns into work. It always turns into work. So we joke around about that. So that's set. How's your mindset? How are you feeling? How prepared are you for this experience? And then there's setting, right? The setting is the place that you are having this experience in, the people who are with you. If you're at a music festival, is there a harm reduction team on site that is trained in expanded states of consciousness? Being at a music festival that has this level of safety, you know, it creates a layer of safety for you to feel a little bit more at ease, you know, diving into the deep end, knowing that there is they usually call it like vibe patrol or the sanctuary or something, knowing that there's people specifically there that you can go to if you're having like a bad trip, really creates that extra layer of safety in the setting aspect of it. Yeah, so those are the two main minimum requirements that we want to be thinking about before going into a psychedelic experience. And then, of course, there's dosage. Psychedelics offer very different effects based on the dosage that you have. You know, there's doses that are more friendly for these recreational experiences. There are doses that are more friendly for your daily human optimization microdosing type of dose, and then there's like the deep dive, right? The bigger, more ceremonial, introspective, let's get in there and do the work that we need to do doses.
You mentioned, was it Iboga? Is that Mount Everest of
Iboga, yeah.
Iboga?
Yeah.
How do these things, how does it differ from like LSD or ayahuasca or something like that? Like, how are they all different in terms
Okay.
of how you experience them?
Sure. Which ones do you want me to cover? Which ones do you want me to compare?
Whichever ones you pick. Your
Okay.
favorite.
Okay. Well, my favorites are 5-MeO and Iboga, but those are definitely like more, I would say, advanced medicines. Not to say that they're not beginner friendly, because they totally can be. It's all about like if you feel the call for it and you feel a strong draw to it, then you know that's not to defer anyone from going straight to these. You know, let's do like mushrooms, which everyone is probably familiar with, ayahuasca and iboga. Does that sound good?
That sounds great.
Yeah. So, mushrooms, I'll talk about like the energy of each of them because I think that speaks to how we experience it, right? So, mushrooms are very mycelial, right? They grow all over the world. They're very connected with each other, with the rest of nature. They connect everything in nature with each other. It's like the great mycelial network, the Earth's internet, basically. And so the experience of mushrooms lends itself to this very unity consciousness type of experience where we feel very connected to ourselves, the people around us, the world around us. It can really open us up to feel more compassion. It can also feel like you're feeling the weight of the world because you feel so connected to, the suffering that's happening. And psychedelic mushrooms are, they can be trippy. They can be visual. They can be kind of cheeky, I would say. Like they're kind of spacey and twisty and cosmic too. They're kind of tricky. I've often heard them referred to as like the little children, but they're also like very wise and have profound insights. Mushrooms are a medicine that were really useful for me at the beginning of my journey. They were like the footstool into the medicine world, but as I explored other medicines, I stopped resonating with them as much. And it's really all about finding your medicine. That's part of the fun of being a psychonaut, just finding the medicine that resonates with you. And then ayahuasca is probably like another one that a lot of people know about and hear about. Ayahuasca is the combination of a root and a vine, and the DMT, which is the psychoactive component, is in the vine. So, right, you think of a vine, it grows outwards, it grows up and out. It's kind of, again, like twisty and spirally, and you don't really know where it's going to take you. Ayahuasca is known as, the grandmother or mother ayahuasca. It's got this very feminine, nurturing, loving energy, very connected to nature. I mean, I think they all are in their own ways. Can be very visual, again, very kind of cosmic, serpenty, also maybe a little tricky. Ayahuasca loves devotion. Like, I feel like she just really loves a strong devotion to her. That's how I feel. And of course, ayahuasca is very purgatory, so it's very common to purge, to vomit. But the purge can come in different ways as well. And what's so amazing about the purge is that it actually allows this cleansing that is just so thorough, and it sucks while you're going through it, and it's pretty hard to go through it, especially if you're not a puker. But wow, after you just feel so good, and that really is a big part of the medicine, is to cleanse and purge, not just physically, but emotionally, energetically. Sometimes you have an ayahuasca purge and you're like, oh my God, that was like I was literally releasing energy. So that's what ayahuasca is kind of known for. And then, the next one is iboga. This is a little bit less known. I don't know if I would even classify it fully as a psychedelic because it really is its own thing. We talk about it in the psychedelic world and we do classify it as a psychedelic, but it's so its own thing. So iboga, a lot of people say that it's like the masculine and the grandfather medicine. That is, I would say, not entirely correct. Iboga kind of encompasses everything. It's both masculine and feminine. It's both and also neither. It's shapeshifty, and it can be kind of tricky, or like trickstery, but it also is known for being very direct. And that is the reason why I personally have found, you know, myself and my deepest healing with the iboga plant. And iboga is it's a rainforest shrub, a tree that grows in the central West Africa region. So Gabon, primarily, Cameroon, Congo. And it really only grows there, whereas ayahuasca grows in a large region of the Amazon. And mushrooms, of course, grow all over the world, right? Everywhere. And so back to iboga, it's very direct. Like iboga will just give it to you straight. It's incredibly internal. It is looking at yourself in the clearest, sharpest mirror possible. It will really take you into yourself. Very visionary medicine for a lot of people. It is said that iboga is possibly the most ancient psychoactive plant that has been consumed by humanity, and that humanity has been consuming it since the dawn of time. Whatever that means.
Yeah.
Possibly more ancient than ayahuasca. And the experience of it being so internal and so direct is very sharply contrasted to these more trippy, twisty medicines like ayahuasca and mushrooms. And there's medicine in all of these. They all have their own teaching style. Ayahuasca is like so beautiful. It's so about like the beauty and the love, whereas like iboga is truth medicine. And sometimes the truth isn't always pretty, but the truth will set you free. And so yeah, I'll stop there.
Yeah, they all sound so unique and different. That's very interesting. When people classify psychedelics to the uninformed, the ignorant, like myself or whatever, you would think they'd all be the same. Like, what's the difference? But the way you,
so different.
Yeah, the way you speak about it, it really seems very unique.
There's a lot to be said about looking at like how they grow and act and interact with nature, because that actually tells you so much about the teaching style of the plant. Each of these plants have their own consciousness and their own like personality almost. And so iboga, how I was saying, like ayahuasca is the vine and it grows upwards and like you kind of don't know where it's going to go. Iboga is actually the root bark. So you have the tree, but the active alkaloids are actually beneath the surface of the earth. They're hidden. They're the root system, and you're eating this root bark. And so if we kind of apply that to ourselves, it's about like, what is at the root of me? What is beneath the surface of who I am that I can't see, and yet it's ruling my life, it's ruling my growth, and it is determining how I show up and who I present myself to be, and what is the truth in that, and who am I really?
I can definitely see how somebody should approach that with a degree of caution.
Yeah, not everyone's ready for that level of truth.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That could be pretty intense for some people.
Yeah. And that's why, support is so important, both in the preparation phase and integration phase. Having someone who really can guide you and hold space for you and, encourage you to empower yourself and to find the meaning for yourself. And, there's so much nuance around doing this type of work with these medicines. And yeah, support is also a big one. Yeah.
So you say it's not a silver bullet. It's not that mainstream push where, you do it and you come back and you're amazing and fixed and whatever it is you're looking for. How would one experience differ from another on how they intertwine or expand on one another?
One another as in like each experience, or
like if I was to do ayahuasca once and then do it again a few months later, would I
Oh, yeah.
expect them to intertwine and grow and expand?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I really see it as one continuous journey and path because, you know, so integration is it's commonly defined as how we take the insights, the wisdom, the things that we learn
Mhm.
from a psychedelic experience and apply it into our own life. And if you're like really on this path, then sometimes integration happens within a next experience. So I'll give you an example of that. I had my first iboga experience 2.5 years ago, and there were some aspects of that that were a little bit confusing. They were a little bit like, I wonder what that is. Right. And 2.5 years later, when I did iboga again, it was basically a direct continuation of those visions. And I got a lot more clarity and I went a lot deeper into what those visions meant and how they related to me and to my truth. So, absolutely, they can continue. And I would say the more work you're willing to do in between sessions, the more it will continue to build. And it's like you're peeling an onion, right? There's another layer and another layer and another layer. And, you know, what we're really trying to get to is the root of ourselves, the core of ourselves, who we are, how we perceive where we come from and what this life is all about. There's so much there for us to uncover at that core. And so all of this work with psychedelics, with coaching, with therapy, like whatever is on your path, with meditation, with breath work, hopefully we're continuously peeling that onion and going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And I don't know how deep it gets. I think it gets pretty deep. But yeah, that's really how I see it, is like peeling back all those layers of untruth, the lies, the stories, the beliefs, and really getting to our core.
I know you said earlier when I asked, who should do it, and you're like, nah, I don't want to say anybody should. You don't want to push that. But do you feel like everybody could, if they chose to do it, benefit from it?
So I had an early mentor, an ayahuasca shaman, who would always say, ayahuasca is for everyone, but not everyone is for ayahuasca. Yeah. So I think these medicines are here for humanity for a reason. They don't discriminate. They don't they're here for us to use in ways that are helpful and not destructive to them, to collaborate with, to work with, to create a better, more connected humanity and earth. That's what I really believe. And so in that way, absolutely these medicines can be of use for everyone. It just takes the person being ready, right? Being ready to do the work, being ready to experience and receive certain insights, to expand their consciousness. Sometimes it can feel like your head is being cracked open with a sledgehammer because your perception of reality just shifts so much, and you got to be ready for that. And again, back to the support, back to the prep, back to the integration, back to the daily practices, showing up for yourself, creating space for yourself. So as long as someone understands that, it's not a magic pill, that it takes work, that by doing this, you're committing to a journey that is much longer than just the ceremony. And you put in an earnest effort to prep your mind, to prep your intentions, and you're committed to doing some of the integration work after. And by the way, integration doesn't ever really end. We don't like fully integrate ever. We're constantly integrating. If someone can kind of tick those boxes, I think they're a good candidate. Yeah. And of course, you want to do your medical screening and make sure you're not on any medications and all of that, of course.
How does microdosing differ from macrodosing?
Yeah, it's pretty different. I would say microdosing psychedelics is not necessarily a psychedelic experience. It's more of a smart drug experience. It's more something that we're using on a day-to-day basis to help with mood, focus, energy. I've coined this term called psychoactive wellness within my Kana brand, which is the act of taking smaller micro doses or psychoactives on a day-to-day basis to help with mood, cognition, and energy, right? So psychoactive wellness is something that is greatly supportive on a day-to-day basis. It's something that supports psychedelic prep and integration. However, it's not going to be the thing that takes you so deep into yourself. You're not going to have these trippy visions or visuals. Um, you're not going to have your head cracked open during a microdosing experience. So a microdose of a psychedelic is like 1/20th to 1/10th of a regular dose. So it truly is meant to be like just a little bit of a glow, a little bit of a boost that is barely perceptual. But over time, as you work within a microdosing protocol, you'll probably notice like, hey, I'm responding to stress differently. Hey, I'm feeling more connected with myself. Oh, I'm feeling more calm and grounded. I've been working out 3 times a week without as much resistance, you know? And there's so much medicine in that. It's all about like making these micro changes rather than blowing your life upside down with both microdosing and doing these higher dose sessions. We definitely don't want to be blowing our life up after
Yeah,
a high dose
absolutely.
session. Yeah.
So, with the current state of legislation in both Canada and the US, a lot of these things are not legal or at least gray area in certain parts. How would somebody go about if they listen to this and are like, I'm interested, I want to do the work? How would they go about starting that?
Yeah. Yeah. So if people don't want to leave the country, there's, ooh, my throat is just.
No.
Yeah, if people don't want to leave the country, there's obviously options in the US, Denver, Oregon, where you can access these experiences legally. There's also like ayahuasca churches, there's mushroom churches that you can look into. And there's also a very thriving underground network of facilitators in both Canada and the US. And of course, we want to practice a lot of discernment. We want to just be really careful with who we're choosing. Um, there's some bad actors, but there's also some really incredible underground facilitators. If people are more willing to leave the country and travel for an experience, I would say Costa Rica and Mexico are the top choices for North Americans to go and experience mushrooms, ayahuasca, 5-MeO-DMT, ibogaine clinics are also in the U.S. in Mexico. In Canada, there are some more legal experiences. So on my website, modernpsychedelics.net, I have a tab called Psychedelic Medicine Network, where I personally vet. I go to, I experience, and I review retreat centers. And there's a couple on there. It's a growing list, but there's, a spot in Canada called Enfold. They do 5-MeO-DMT experiences. And, this is legal from what I know. It's an unscheduled substance. Iboga is also I don't know if it's legal or gray area in Canada, but there's a lot of iboga in Canada as well. And there's iboga in Costa Rica and Mexico. There's a few centers that I work very closely with that I refer people to. So there's lots of options. If people are in Europe, Netherlands, Portugal, Spain, there's tons of options. And, of course, there's going to be lots of people listening who are not willing to do illegal things, and that's totally valid. And then there's also going to be some that, think it's ridiculous that these potentially life-saving substances are illegal, especially when they grow literally in the earth and we are making them illegal. It's just
And
wild.
they don't have
Um,
a lethal dose either, do they? Like you can't take a lethal dose. So
It depends on substance to
yeah.
substance. So iboga is lethal.
Okay.
It's the most probably complicated one to work with. And so it's one that you definitely do not want to be doing alone or
Yeah.
without a professional who is trained, because it can cause a heart attack for some people. So part of the screening for iboga is actually getting a heart scan and getting cleared for that. And, even some providers will ask for a liver panel. So that is one that definitely requires medical screening just to make sure that everyone's safe. But, for people who are cleared for iboga, it's completely safe and, not to be worried about, but we definitely want to take those precautions to make sure we're being safe. Now, yeah, with like mushrooms, LSD, ayahuasca, I don't even know if you could do a lethal dose of ayahuasca just because the taste of it is so awful that there's only so much you could take. It's like nature designed it that way for a reason
Is
so
it
that you
like a tea? Like
it's like a brew.
ew, a brew.
Yeah, it's like thick. Like you're drinking mud, basically.
That sounds
Yeah.
intense.
Yeah, it's not pleasant. So yeah.
Brew.
Yeah, but with very high doses, you might cause some psychological and nervous system damage. So definitely want to be careful with that and, don't overdo it. More medicine is not necessarily better. In fact, it's not better in most circumstances.
The
Yeah.
dose makes the poison.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody starts Googling ayahuasca, where ayahuasca ceremony, ayahuasca trip near me, whatever. How should they vet? What should they look for?
Oh, such a good question. I'm so happy you're asking this. First of all, really use this as an opportunity to connect with your intuition and your gut and allow that to guide you. If you get any sort of weird feeling, trust that. Trust
Okay.
that. If someone's unwilling to get on a phone call or a Zoom or just like connect with you in person, I would say that's a little bit suspicious because doing this work, we definitely want to create safety and trust and rapport. That's such a big part of the process. So being able to just like get on a phone call or a Zoom or just connect with the person who's going to be facilitating for you is an important part of the process. If there is some sort of pressure, that's a red flag. Like if they're pressuring you or trying to convince you, that's a red flag. And, it might be because they are financially motivated or who knows. There's a lot of ego amongst facilitators, which is so ironic and funny because psychedelics have a way of either humbling people or making their ego even bigger. So just something to watch out for. If someone presents themselves as a healer, as a shaman, as someone who's there to help you, no, sorry, help is not the right word because they are there to help you. But if someone is presenting themselves as, I'm going to fix you, I'm going to heal you, I hold the keys to your healing, huge red flag. your healing is between you and the medicine. You are the only person who can heal yourself. And that is so important to know. And that's actually a huge mental shift that people have to overcome when first coming into this, because a lot of people are like, you can heal me, you can save me, you can fix me, please do it. And this outsourcing of our power is precisely why we are suffering, because we have not stepped into our power. So know that this is going to require you to step into your power and be very suspicious of anyone who claims that they are going to be doing the work for you. Another red flag would definitely be like if there's no support for prep and integration, or even if they don't acknowledge that prep and integration are important. Overall, you should feel supported, you should feel safe, you should feel at ease. And of course, some nerves are completely normal. If you're not nervous, that's probably strange. Like you should be a little bit nervous before each. Like I've had, almost 40 ayahuasca ceremonies, and I still get nervous before each experience, because the very nature of psychedelics is to be diving into the unknown. And that's always scary. So yeah, overall, just making sure you are feeling safe, supported, and that your facilitator is empowering you, that, they have resources, that they have tools that they can direct you to. And just that, they didn't just like do iboga and go to Africa for 2 months and become trained to serve iboga, and now are serving it when their relationship with the medicine is only like 3 months old, right? What is their relationship with the plant? Is there a respect for the lineage that is missing? Especially with things like iboga and ayahuasca. Just, look for someone who's like a vet, who has done their work, who has done their healing work. That is probably the biggest requirement for facilitators. Like they've done the work themselves. They've navigated these realms, this darkness, this confusion, this all the challenges within themselves, because ultimately that's gonna teach you to hold space for someone going through that so much more than any training or course or book will ever do. Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. A healthy suspicion, a healthy caution from taking drugs from strangers is always on the internet is always probably a good rule of thumb regardless.
Yeah.
So
I talk a lot about these things on my podcast, Modern Psychedelics, and like there's tons of episodes where I dive a little bit deeper into the specifics for this kind of thing with each medicine, like what to look for with 5-MeO, what to look for with iboga, what to look for with ayahuasca. So if people are curious, there's much more where that came from.
fantastic. Well, Lana, thank you so much for your time today. Where can people find more of you? I know you mentioned your podcast, so mention that again. And then where can they find you on Instagram and your website and stuff like that?
For sure. Yes. Thanks for having me. This was so fun.
It was so fun.
So nice to talk about psychedelics to a psychedelic noob.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your curiosity. So the podcast is Modern Psychedelics, over 120 episodes. It's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple. Give it a listen. It's very empowering and just full of lots of information.
It's got good ratings too. I pulled it up on Spotify. 4.9 stars. You're crushing it.
I have an amazing community and listenership. Yeah, they're very supportive of my work, which really keeps me going. And then Modern Psychedelics on Instagram. I'm on YouTube doing some more fun vlogs and things like that. I'm about to publish a vlog from the Iboga retreat that I just went to, which is like really poetic and beautiful and more artsy. And then modernpsychedelics.net, you can find information about my coaching. I have an Iboga prep and integration program that I'm just launching. And then I have a 6-month transformational coaching program that is all about self-discovery, working with those 7 levels of energy. And then my personal is Lana Pribic on Instagram, where I just show my fun love for fashion and personal style and food and my cat and travels, and photography and things like that. Because I'm
Fun.
just a human too.
Good. Good.
Yeah.
Well, typically to end this podcast, I ask my guest who would be the person that they would be most interested in speaking to or hearing on a podcast, assuming they're live and well. And if I ever get them on, I will, of course, let them know that they're here because of you. So who would that person be for you?
Oh my goodness. Good question to ask a podcaster. I'm trying to think who my dream guest is on a podcast, because I've had the honor of interviewing a lot of people that I've wanted to interview. So, oh my gosh, this is such a hard question. I feel like it would maybe be like a really creative person. For some reason, like someone like Elizabeth Gilbert pops up. She's like an artist. She's a writer and she talks a lot about creativity. But I'm sure if I thought about it, I would be able to like, oh, what about the guy who wrote The Creative Act? Like something I love talking about creativity. Rick Rubin, maybe?
Rick Rubin? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So definitely someone who has a really expanded understanding of creativity and the creative process, because I'm so passionate about that and just wanting to step into that for myself more.
That would be really cool. I'd love to speak with that. I reached out to a marble sculptor because I was like, I want to try marble sculpting. So let me find somebody to talk to.
Interesting.
Hey,
I love how
haven't got back to
curious
it.
you are.
Well, one of my first guests on here was a fencer. So now I do fencing. So
cool.
I'm getting my butt kicked in fencing every single week. And then I had a couple ultra distance runners. So now I'm doing a triathlon, an Ironman. So
amazing.
So I may be a little 2% moldable by my guests. They're so passionate and they get so excited that I'm like, oh, I want to do that too.
Amazing. So are you going to do psychedelics now that you've talked to me?
Well, I've got to do my research. I've got, if I find somewhere in Denver, can I shoot it over to you and be like, hey, what do you think of this place?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Then I will keep
I don't know
updated.
like the US scene as well.
For sure.
Yeah.
You could probably fill it out a little bit more than me. I'll do.
Sure.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been an absolute blast.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Chase Merrill podcast.